Yo guys, what is up? This is Scummers from MenuDocs coming back at you with Discord.py episode 14. And just before we dive into the episode, I just want to go over something that's really cool because I didn't go over it in the last episode when I actually used the regex. So, in this little thing up here called regex101.com, you can paste in a regular expression and then it'll give you an explanation of what it is. So we've got our plus and our question mark here, which matches between 1 and unlimited times, as few times as possible, expanding as needed. So it's a lazy, but it also gets everything. And like you can see here that the slash D matches a digit which is equal to 0 to 9, and then you've got this little bit here where it matches 1 to 5, and then you've got individual matches where it's case sensitive. It's just a really cool tool. Definitely not sponsored, go check it out. And you can also do a code generator down here. Generates the code in Python for using this with a couple of little functions. Now, it's just really sick in my mind. But anyway, let's get back to the code. Let's actually jump on it, jump into it, get started. So we're going to be muting people, but I kind of want to cache. So we're going to do bot.muted underscore users equals that. Bad boy right there. Now, why am I doing this? Well, quite frankly, we don't want to be querying the database for every single mute that we need to check, which is why we're going to store one locally. We're going to have a local cache so that we can store our current mutes locally without querying the database, so we can just check against this little dictionary we've got. So we just type this in bot.mutes.get underscore all, bam, 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 and then we're going to go for mute in current mutes. Now I'm just doing this bit here because I know what the schema or the layout for our database interaction is going to be and how we're going to save it. So you guys don't know that at the moment, but if you just stick around for about another 5 minutes, you'll see me put it into practice and then you'll be good to go. So now let's jump over to our moderation file because this should all be done. We're going to want a couple more things. We're going to want from copy, import, deep copy. We're going to want to import tasks here, and then we'll also want to go from dayutil dot relative delta import a relative delta, because quite simply put, we're going to be making some background tasks this episode, and essentially that's just going to run the background for a mute command. We're going to spice it up, make it better, make it way better, and so it's just going to automatically unmute people. It's going to handle if the bot goes down, if the bot comes back up. You know, it just makes it way better. I don't know how to say it better. Makes it way better. And we've also rounded time here just because, you know, it kind of sucks seeing time rounded to like 8 decimal places in your chat. Doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing, as my mates would say. So anyway, why don't we start with our mute command? We need to change this up somehow. We need to save it to the database in a really posh voice, as I say. So we're going to check. We're going to make sure that the user isn't actually muted yet, right? So this is a dictionary, so we can try and index it with member.id. And then, if they do, so if it does index it, that means that this user is already muted. Right, so like you don't want to mute them again, that'd defeat the purpose. But if they're not already muted, it'll throw a key error because it can't find the key in the dictionary, and then we're just good to go. And then here's our data schema. So we're gonna go data equals bang bang, some opening closing brackets. Define our underscore ID because our Mongo class requires it, and the ID is just gonna be member.id. When did they get muted at? Datetime dot datetime dot now. What a hype beast. Now there is an optional mute duration on this, because it doesn't have to be set. We're going to go at time or none. And so what this is essentially going to do is it's just going to make sure that if they do have a mute time, it'll be saved in seconds, and that way we can handle it from the database when we get it back, or we can check if it's none. And that way if it's explicitly none, we can just go, look man, this guy is not meant to be unmuted automatically, he needs to be unmuted manually. And then we need to check who muted them, you know, just for check's sake down the line. It'll become useful, trust me. And then we also just want the guild ID, because when we want to unmute them, we need the guild to be able to unmute them, because we need the guild role. And that's essentially the schema for our mutes. And so you'll see here that I've actually just indexed it by _ID. So for member.id in all of our mutes is how we'll save it. And then we're just going to save this entire mute data to that ID in the dictionary. So it's all good to go. Now we're just going to insert this into our little bit of a database connection. So self.bot.mutes.upsert. And then we're just going to put data in there. And that'll automatically update or insert a new one. And then we're just going to put self.bot.muted_users. We're just going to add it to our little cache. 6, so that's that done. So let's add the role. And then because I want to be really nice, you guys, and make this nice and aesthetically pleasing, we're going to get rid of this turnaround. And we're going to make it really nice. If not time, we're just going to go wait ctx.send. You're going to have to bear with me here. I might mute myself for a bit and just type this out. So I will unmute myself after I finish typing this out. But essentially, what we're just going to be doing here, I'll explain this, but before I check it, is we're going to get the minutes and we're going to get the seconds using divmod. And then we're just going to go time divided by 60, and then that'll give you minutes to seconds. And then for hours and minutes, you again just call divmod, except this time you call it on minutes. And then you divide it by 60 again. And then essentially what we're just going to do here is if hours elephant minutes and then elephant seconds. So we're only going to do it from the maximum one. So essentially what we're going to do here is I'll actually just copy and paste this across. So just so I can explain it and talk. So essentially what we're going to do, if there's hours, I want to go, I muted this guy for 1 hour, 20 minutes, 20 seconds. But if it's only been muted for minutes, we don't really need to have the hours in there. So we get rid of that. And then we do the same for seconds. And that's our little time thing done. And then this thing down here, kind of like it, but also kind of don't. So our background task is going to be every 5 minutes, which is conveniently 300 seconds. So essentially what we're going to do is, if it's less than 300 seconds or 5 minutes, we want to sleep on that and unmute it ourselves. Because you don't want to mute someone for like 2 minutes, but then have to wait up to 5 minutes for the background task to come through and figure out that they actually need to be unmuted. So we're going to put that in there, and then we're just going to go down here and we're going to try to remove them from the dataset. .mutes, .delete. Because if you get this far, you can guarantee that they've been unmuted, or at least the bot has tried. So then you're all good to go. It doesn't matter if this bit down here kind of fails, because, well, they've been unmuted. So they shouldn't be in the data. Which is what we are aiming for with this try except pass. So that's sick. That's our mute command done. Let's do the unmute command while we're at it, and then we'll introduce the concept of a background task. So essentially, if we get this far, we can assume that they need to be unmuted. Either way, we want them to be removed from our good old data set. I'm just going to chuck a return on that because I've realized that you kind of want to return if they're not muted. Otherwise, it will attempt to unmute them regardless. And that's all you need to add to our unmute command to actually do that. So, what about background tasks? We should probably, introduce the core concept of our actual episode. How are we going on time? 8 minutes. 8 minutes, damn, that's way faster than last recording. I must be doing something right, or fast, or both. Damn. Alright, so at the top of this, we're just going to introduce @tasks.loop. Now you've got a lot of arguments here. You can go seconds, minutes, hours. That's essentially how long between each loop. So you've got a while true loop, and then you do time.sleep, 60 seconds at the end of it. That's exactly the same as what we're doing here, except it's all internal, so you don't have to do it yourself. So you just do minutes equals 5, and then this will run every 5 minutes. And we're just going to call this check_current_mutes. Bang, bang, bang. Get the current time to compare it from datetime.datetime.notDatetime datetime.now. Now, because we're going to be removing items from the dictionary, we do want to copy it, because otherwise you're going to get an error called iteration error, I believe it is, and that will be that the iterable, which it's trying to loop over, has changed size. And because Python internally keeps an index. I'll call it an index for now. Keeps an index of whereabouts it is. That's why it fails. Mutes items. So if you remove one item from mutes, it just whacks the whole thing out. Python's smart enough to recognize that, and so it'll raise an error. So we don't want to be removing from the same one that we're checking against, which is why we're making it 2 separate dictionaries. And because of how Python and just object-oriented referencing works, we do have to make a deep copy rather than just looking at the same bits in memory. Now we just want to check if value, mute duration is none, continue to the next iteration. This user does not need to be automatically unmuted. That's simply because, they don't have a mute duration, which means we don't need to unmute them. So just continue to the next iteration, check for the next person, and then we're good to go. So let's get the unmute time so we can compare things. And we're just going to go and check. And this is where relative data comes in. Relative delta, not relative data. Thank you very much. Relative delta. And then we're just going to add the amount of seconds. So essentially this takes a lot of arguments, as you can see here. So if it's got a plural on it, so hours, seconds, minutes, it's adding that to the current time. So we're going to have the date time value for muted at, and then we're going to add X amount of seconds to that, which essentially means it will give us the time that the user, believe it or not, is meant to be unmuted. And then you can just call a comparison on that and go if current time is, if the unmute time is in the past, we do need to unmute them. So let's do that. And now we do need to fetch some things with the bot. Let me just get rid of that kite thing there. Guild equals self.bot.get underscore guild. Guild, please. Value. And this is where a guild ID comes in, which we define down here. And that's why that is stored in there. Ooh. Member. Guild. Get underscore member. Value. Underscore ID. You could replace this with the key because it's technically the same thing. However, just for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to make sure it all comes from value because that's just one nice big happy family. It's just one nice big happy dictionary. And then we're just going to get the role again with discord.utils.get. And then we're going to pass in guild.roles, which we've just fetched, and we're going to call the name equals to muted. Check that they've actually got the role before attempting to unmute. Remove it. Now, because we don't have a CTX to send to, I'm just going to print to the console that we have unmuted this user. So we're just going to go member.display underscore name. So that's just going to print out, look, I've unmuted these guys. If that doesn't work, whatever. And then down here, we're just going to copy and paste the same code across because we want to remove them from our database. Go to wherever the bottom of this task is. Bang, 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 bang. Boom. That should be all of that done. Now we do want to add something in there. So we do kind of want to call this because it's not currently being started. So we're going to go self.mute underscore task. It's called self.check underscore current mutes. And we're just going to call dot start on that. And now we also want something for when a cog is unloaded. So essentially this function will be called whenever this cog gets unloaded by discord.py. And since we want to stop the task, we just have to cancel it. So whenever this cog gets unloaded, cancel the mute check task. Otherwise, it will pretty much just continue running and then you're going to have some issues on your hand. So just make sure to cancel it. And now because we're starting this on init, the bot won't be guaranteed to be ready. So let's add another prerequisite down here. And that's just going to be called, and you can get this from the docs, a before loop. So you just go at check current mutes dot before underscore loop. That's just another one the decorators provided by discord.py. It's really helpful actually. Call that before underscore check current mutes. So this will just run before this function. So before this runs, this one's guaranteed to run, so we're just going to go await self.bot dot wait until underscore ready. And so that'll just wait until the bot's ready before it actually goes ahead and then starts to run this loop here, which just means that we make sure that everything is loaded before we actually go ahead and do things. Now, let's go test the bot. Invalid syntax, line 95. Ooh, source. That's because I forgot an equal sign. Let's make sure this all works. So we should get an empty dictionary down here. Document reference before assignment. I did that again. I did that last episode as well. I forgot to put a capital for my own class now. Sweet. Hopefully it should work now. So that's our mutes. And then if we go check the database, which I have conveniently got pulled up in this tab right here, you'll notice that we do not have any mutes. So we've got the database, we've got the collection established, but there's nothing in it at the moment. Once it decides it's actually going to retrieve the list of databases and collections. So while we wait for that to work, oh cool, look at that. It's the query results 0, there's nothing in there. So let's go ahead and let's just make sure that this runs. Help, mute, unmute, cool. What if I want to mute myself? Let's hope this works. 10 seconds. Boom, muted for 10 seconds. Let's refresh the page just to check that it's actually put it in the database. Wow, look at that, look. Muted the user that we muted this time for 10 seconds, muted by this person, and there's the guild ID. I do not want to modify that. Now it says we've been unmuted, so we no longer have the role. It's removed it. We haven't triggered the background task, and let's just check to make sure it actually left the database. Oh, sick. So what if I go ahead and what if I go mute at go to the rush code, because I don't want to mute myself. 15 seconds, it's muted them. And then the script stops. Damn. If you're running the code from episode 13, this would be the end of the road. That'd now be muted forever. However, that's not the case. It's in our database, so what do? We just press F5, we run our bot again, and look at this. Give it a couple seconds. Look at that, we've got our mute in the database. Look at that. Bam! Look at that. That is just the peak of human engineering. So notice you're still muted because our background task is not quite running yet. So it's not guaranteed to run, well, it is guaranteed to run, but the time of execution, it's just waiting for the bot to be ready and things, so it's just going to be waiting in the background. And, well, I don't quite want to wait 5 minutes to prove to you that this works. So you're just going to have to take my word for it, and if worse comes to worse, jump into GitHub and look at the code on there. Because I can guarantee that that's been fully tested and I've probably left it running overnight to make sure it works. Now, I've got another idea as well. Why don't we make it so that these are permanent, right? So, because currently, if you leave a guild, you lose all your roles. So, like, hear me out. What if someone got, like, muted, left the guild and came back? They wouldn't have mute anymore. We don't want that to happen. So what do? What do we do? Well, an on-member join. We're going to add something really, really cool. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go if, well, try, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to go try, jump in here, because I want to borrow this code. Find the code you want to copy and paste. Try, copy and paste. If self.bot.muted underscore IDs, member.id. This user is already muted. But the thing is, I don't want them to say this user is already muted. I need to give them that role again. I need to re-mute them so that they can't just leave the guild, come back, and then suddenly no longer be muted. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to use our role. We're going to copy. So if they are muted, we're going to fetch the role, and then if the role exists, utx.guild. Well, it'll be member.guild, please. If role. And then we're just going to go ahead and we're going to go await r me hurries, await member add underscore roles, and we're just going to add that role. Problem solved. Why don't we put a print statement in there as well so we can see it happening. remuted, display underscore name upon gold tree. Sweet. So that should be that sorted now. So why don't we just go ahead and test that? You might hear my drawer opening. I'm just pulling out my phone so I can actually leave the Discord and rejoin, just for testing purposes. So we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna run the bot. Just make sure I'm still muted on this account. Put that on my lap so when notification goes off, it doesn't actually ping. Because otherwise, that's gonna vibrate through the entire table. Cool. So we are still muted. So I can go ahead, pull out my phone, scroll down, click leave server. Now you've noticed he's left, so he doesn't have any roles anymore. So now let me just go up here real quick. Let me just click invite members on my phone. Scroll through, find myself. Click invite. Invite has been sent. Let's rejoin. He's just been welcomed back. And look at that, he's muted again. That's because he's still muted. He's meant to be muted. So that's just, keeping them muted. It's the key, But anyway, that's all for this episode, guys. I hope you like it. If anything happens, jump into Discord for help. Check the GitHub and try that code if our code's not working. It should be working, but I just don't have the time to fully test it in the episode, given our current loop timer is 5 minutes. Otherwise, guys, peace out, happy coding, about the whole works. Until next time, have fun.